Welcome to Kidney Transplants, where we continue the theme. Last lesson we talked about dialysis and how dialysis works. We talked about the inconvenience of dialysis, i.e. the idea that you have to hook yourself up 3 or 4 times a week for perhaps 4 or 5 hours. And it's not a long-term solution, dialysis. So if you're on dialysis because you've got kidney disease, the thing you dream of is a kidney transplant. However, kidney transplants are getting less and less common. And this is because people are dying less, basically. So somebody in a car crash, they used to harvest their organs, they would have an organ donor card, and the hospital would check with the family, is this okay? Can we harvest their organs? And very quickly there'd be a waiting list for kidney transplants, and the person would go into theatre and receive this kidney donation. And the interesting thing is that kidney transplants are actually becoming more and more successful. Like any transplant, we have to make sure that there's a tissue match. We have to make sure that the antigens on the surface of the cells are similar to that of the recipients. So often this can be a close family member, and that's one way of reducing the rejection problem. But the other way we can do it is through immunosuppressant drugs. When somebody receives a kidney transplant, you pretty much know straight away whether it's going to take or not. The rejection will happen really quickly. However, that person for the rest of their life will have to continue taking a level of drug that is an immunosuppressant. When you take any immunosuppressant, you're suppressing your immune system, and that makes you more able to become subject to picking up other bugs and becoming ill. When you've received a kidney transplant, you really need to make sure that your diet is healthy. Perhaps you limit the amount of protein, you'll limit the amount of glucose, you'll limit the amount of salts, and you'll ensure it's rich in fruits and vegetables. You need to look after your health so that you don't pick up lots of other bugs because of the immunosuppression drugs also. The interesting thing is with kidney transplants is that they don't actually take the old kidney away. I mean, this is major surgery, both for the recipient and for the donor. And sometimes they'll do live donors. So what does that mean? It means if you need a kidney transplant and time is ticking on and you haven't received one, then you might receive one from a close family member. You can survive quite easily on one kidney, again, watching your diet, your salt intake, and so on. So when you receive that kidney, they don't actually put it in your back here, which is where your kidneys sit. They sit in pockets of fat in your back. Where they actually put it is in the abdomen region. In the abdomen region, it means it's much easier to put it in there, and also if there are problems later on, if there is a rejection issue and we need to remove it, it's much more accessible. Let's have a look at a diagram of that. Okay, so here we can see the transplanted kidney. These are the 2 original kidneys. It's hooked up to a ureter, and it's hooked up to a vein and an artery, just like a normal kidney would be. To increase the supply of kidneys, one thing that they've done is when you apply for a driving licence, there's a little tick box thing on there where you tick to say, yes, I would be happy to donate my kidney in the event of my death. Again, the hospital would still check with your family that met their wishes also. So let's weigh up the advantages and disadvantages of either having dialysis or kidney transplant. Okay, so with dialysis, the good thing is that it's readily available. If your kidney is failing, you're not going to have to go on a waiting list. It's available, it's in the hospital. Kidney transplant, of course, there's a big waiting list. You can wait years and years, and in fact, you're probably more likely to never receive a kidney transplant. You're extremely lucky if you do get one. Dialysis is expensive. Now, that's surprising, but the actual issue is that if you go on dialysis, you might be on it for 10 years. And if it costs £5,000 a year to keep you on dialysis, then over 10 years, that's £50,000. A kidney transplant is cheaper in the long run because although it might cost £20,000, the success rate is increasing due to immunosuppressant drugs and the ability to match tissues. So over the long run, you'd save yourself £30,000. With dialysis, dialysis, you need regular sessions, and when you're young, you don't want to be going and being hooked up to a machine in the hospital. You need to be developing, you need to be at school, you need to be enjoying your social life. So during those formative years, it's really quite a hindrance. And when you get older, of course, what's happening then is you've normally got a family, you're trying to hold a job down. How do you spend time with the family and keep a job when you're hooked up to a dialysis machine? Kidney transplant, yes, you'll be in a hospital and it's a major operation, but once it's done, you can then go on and lead a fairly normal life. So dialysis is really disruptive. And a kidney transplant, apart from watching your diet and taking immunosuppressant drugs for the rest of your life, is actually availing you to a normal life. Dialysis, as we've mentioned, it's damaging over the long term, because although it does the function of the kidney and it'll extend your life, it's not doing the exact function. The homeostatic control of the kidney isn't quite as sharp, and so over the long term it can be quite damaging to have the wrong water balance, the wrong ion balance in your blood. With a kidney transplant, you might get another infection. We've mentioned that because of the immunosuppressant drugs. And also, if you're ready for a transplant, you've probably been on dialysis for a very long time. You might have already accumulated some health issues on the back of that. There'll be a massive amount of testing that has to take place before you become eligible. They'll want to know your age, they want to know your health status. Do you smoke? What are the chances of success of this kidney? So let's have a look at some questions. Okay, what chemicals in the urine would suggest kidney damage? Well, I would say protein, because that would mean that the glomerulus was damaged and the holes were now big enough for proteins to fit through during that period of ultrafiltration. Normally, of course, the holes are too small and only glucose, salts, urea and water pass through. So if protein is in the filtrate, which then goes on to be the urine, that's a problem, it's a clear sign. And also glucose. Glucose would suggest that it's not being reabsorbed back into the blood, so that could be a little bit of a warning sign too. Okay, we talked about this one. How much would you save? Well, if you work it out, you'll find you'll save about £30,000 over a 10-year period, assuming, because of course, kidney transplants also don't last forever. 75% of them will last 10 years, and that is a good length of time, but it's not going to last the long run. Why are the number of transplants reducing? We said, unfortunately, car safety is getting better. There's airbags, there's improved braking systems, speed limits are coming down. All these things are having an impact on the number of people who die in car accidents, which is good, but it's not good if you're sitting waiting for a kidney transplant. What is a live donor transplant? Again, if you're able to match from a family member. And somebody in one of my classes was like, well, isn't that the obvious choice to just get a family member to donate a kidney? But remember, a lot of family units, depending on the culture, don't have close family members. And so, and again, you know, if you get to the age of 50, who are you going to ask? You're not going to ask your children. Maybe you're not close to your brothers, maybe or sisters, maybe they live in different countries. It's different. Sometimes when you get families that are close, nuclear families, big families, that's clearly going to increase your chances. Why is it increasingly important to find a close tissue match when matching a kidney donor with a kidney recipient? So why is it increasingly less important? Well, matching techniques have improved and immunosuppressant drugs have also improved. And lastly, why is the new kidney placed in the abdomen region? Because if there are any rejection issues, it's a less invasive operation to remove it. It's a less invasive operation anyway. We'll only remove the old kidney if it's diseased and it's going to cause more problems. So as we mentioned, if you are lucky enough to get a kidney, it isn't going to last forever. You've probably got about 10 years. When your kidney starts to fail, it will be different levels of functionality. They'll keep testing you, and when you get down to a certain percentage, you need to go back onto dialysis. But the future is hopeful. In 2011, scientists managed to clone, using embryonic stem cells, they managed to clone part of a kidney. And the hope is that soon they'll be able to clone a whole kidney, and they'll be able to leave off the antigens, and that will reduce the need for immunosuppressant drugs. So in a very short space of time, we hope to be able to create kidneys using stem cells.